This video is brought to you by WeGotSoccer.com. Be sure to visit We Got Soccer for everyday low prices on all the latest soccer gear. Don't forget to use coupon code SR4U at checkout for $10 off an order of $100 or more. Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you a comparison between the entire Predator LZ line. There's been a ton of confusion around this shoe, the difference between the LZ and the Absolion, the differences between the Absolion and the Absolado. There's just been so much confusion, and while I'm not using the Perdito in this particular line comparison, mainly because the Perdito is so far down the line that it kind of gets into a generic shoe, or it's more about the graphics on the shoe more than anything. So I really wouldn't worry it, and I wouldn't compare it to either three of these shoes, simply because it's really not even in the same, not the same price range, not even the same kind of boat. It's completely different. But as far as comparing these three shoes, it's very tricky as far as what the differences are, especially visually. As you guys can see, I have them all laid out here. I haven't told you which one's which, but they all appear to be very, very similar. There's not much difference in terms of visual effect here. But from left to right, I have the top-end Predator LZ, I have the mid-tier Predator Absolion LZ, then I have the low-end Predator Absolado LZ. And as you guys can see, like I said, they're very, very similar in terms of looks. But I'm going to go over this video kind of very quickly, what the main differences are between these shoes. And a lot of you guys who are probably looking at the LZ may not have to jump for all that extra money, because the Absolion may pretty well do the job for you. But as far as the LZ is concerned, it definitely is the nicest. So we'll say that right off the bat. It's definitely, if you're looking for the best version of the Predator LZ, it's definitely going to come from the top end model. It has the best hybrid leather synthetic material, nice and thin, nice and flexible. Doesn't have the natural leather padding feel, but it's really, really good quality. Fits really comfortable against your skin, and like I said, very, very comfortable. And it probably has the best fit of the bunch as well. The materials does tend to have a little bit of stretch to it, so you can get a pretty custom fit after a break-in period. And just like I said, it's the best quality upper material of the bunch here. As far as the lethal zones are concerned on this particular shoe, they're exactly the same as the Predator Absolion. There's no difference whatsoever. You have your 5 lethal zones on the Predator LZs, as most people know by now. I'll go over them very quickly. You have your pass pad on the instep here, which is essentially a memory foam pad that runs through the instep here to give you more of a leather-like feel, more of a cushion feel when passing and receiving the ball. You have the sweet spot, which is probably the most noticeable zone on the Predator LZ. And of course you have the drive zone, which is your more or less standard striking element that we've come to expect from the Predator line. And then of course you have your first touch zone here on the front, and then the dribble zone on the outside of the shoe. Just keep in mind that the Predator LZ, while all of these zones do make sense of how they were designed and how Adidas came about the idea, don't buy this shoe in hopes that this is going to improve your skills. No rubber element on a shoe or any kind of technology in a shoe is going to help improve a skill. Skill is something that you kind of obtain through practice and training, so don't expect your shot or your control to be any better with the Predator LZ than it would be in any other shoe. It's kind of a misconception among soccer shoes as a whole. So I just wanted to get that off the bat. As far as fit goes, this is probably the best fitting one as well. It has that synthetic suede liner on the inside here, very, very soft, very comfortable, very little break-in period on this particular shoe as well. Then of course you have the sprint frame Soleplate, which is loosely based off of the Adizero. Nice and flexible through the forefoot, and is definitely the most flexible of the bunch here. Has that classic Adizero stud pattern here, the triangular studs that are kind of that combination between conical and bladed studs. And of course it is MyCoach compatible, as are all 3 of these particular shoes. So if you do have the MyCoach chip, you can place that in your shoe and track your stats. And as far as the Absolion goes, it is, I don't want to say very different from the Predator LZ, because it's not. It's more or less quite similar. The synthetic upper, it's just a synthetic leather material, definitely on the thicker side, not as soft, not as flexible. And just from right out of the box, this is a very, very stiff shoe that I found, which I find the Absolion always to be a much stiffer shoe than the actual Predator. There is definitely a break-in period. I'm not done breaking these shoes in as of quite yet. At least I'm not completely comfortable in them yet. But just keep in mind, they fit a little bit narrower as a whole, especially through the midfoot area. And the material, like I said, is just not as soft. But by no means is this a bad synthetic upper. It provides a much more solid feel to the shoe than the Predator LZ does. And that's kind of up to preference. If you want that little bit of a thinner feel, the Predator LZ is going to provide that, where the Absolion has a little bit thicker, slightly bulkier, and just overall like a more solid feel to it when striking and touching the ball. But as far as the zones are concerned, like I said, up close here, if you want to check out the high quality pictures on the review page at my website, that'll give you a really good idea as to how these zones do look up close. And I can tell you that there's no difference whatsoever between the lethal zones on the Predator LZ and the Predator Absolion. They're completely the same. So you have your dribble zone on the outside, the first touch zone, your drive zone, your sweet spot thing, and then of course you have the touchpad here on the instep. The only difference being that it says Absolion on the instep here. But that's pretty much it as far as the upper goes. And like I said, the fit, I would argue that this shoe is a little bit narrower through the midfoot and has a slightly larger toe box. And just is overall much stiffer out of the box. You still have a synthetic suede liner, although it's a little bit of a different material. But the gist of the shoe is very, very similar. As far as the sole plate is concerned, while it does look very, very similar, I'll put them right next to each other, there is a difference as far as how they feel. This is a much, much stiffer sole plate, not as flexible by any means. And I think that's part of the reason why the break-in period seems to be a little bit more harsh, simply because the shoe's not as flexible. So it just requires a little bit more time for the shoe to kind of soften up and break in. And of course you have the same exact stud pattern on this particular shoe, based on the sprint frame. And the sole plate itself, I'm assuming that's where the extra weight comes in. This shoe weighs about an ounce more than the standard Predator LZ, where that one weighs about 8 ounces. This one weighs in at around 9 ounces. So 1 ounce more, while that's not a huge difference, and not something that you're going to really be able to notice on your feet, just keep in mind that there is a slight difference between the two. Of course, like I said, stud pattern is exactly the same. And of course, you do have the My Coach slot, so My Coach chip is compatible if you do have that. You can just slot that in the shoe and track your stats. As far as the Absolion goes, for me, this is not a shoe that I would personally buy, simply because the quality of the synthetic is definitely not there. And there's a couple of reasons why I wouldn't get this. I'll go over it. The first thing is the synthetic upper. It's one of those uppers that feels like a mesh upper with kind of a vinyl covering over top, if that makes sense. It's one of those really kind of low-end uppers. And while it feels to be pretty thin in your hands here, just kind of touching it, it feels very, very soft. When you actually put it on your foot and start juggling the ball or something like that, it's actually very surprisingly bulky. It feels like you're wearing multiple pairs of socks. And overall, I just had a hard time getting a good feel for the ball. I just was not a big fan of how the shoe actually did feel in terms of touching the ball. As far as the lethal zones are concerned, they're pretty much non-existent, which is kind of another reason why I just personally would not go for this shoe. I feel like there's better options in this price range rather than the Absolado. But as far as the zones are concerned, they're really just decals on the shoe painted on rather than actually being rubber zones. Again, if you want to get a closer kind of up close version or up close picture of this particular thing so you can see it better, go ahead and check out the high quality pictures on my website. There will be a link in the description right to the review page. But like you guys can see, I'll bring this as close as possible. This is just kind of an indent in the upper, and it's basically just painted on black to look like the lethal zone. So you have, this is not a lethal zone at all. This first touch zone on top here, again, it's just an indentation with painted on. You can actually see the paint scuffing right there. I don't know if you guys can see that. So there's no rubber there whatsoever. And then these two zones here, the drive zone and the sweet spot zone, are pretty much identical to what you're going to find on the Predator LZ SL. So they really don't provide any extra grip, but they just have that little bit of extra bulk to the upper, which I don't think the upper needs at all. So again, it kind of makes the shoe feel somewhat clunky on your feet. And then of course the padded zone on the inside here, it's definitely not as kind of high quality. It's not as well done, and there's definitely not as kind of a firm of a foam, so it's not as high quality of a foam. So the impact is not as great as it would be from the Absolion or the Predator LZ. Then of course it says Absolado here on the instep. As far as the sole plate and stud pattern is concerned, this is identical to the Absolion. There's no difference here. So it's a little bit stiff from right out of the box, but it will definitely loosen up. And of course you get the same exact stud pattern, which is the triangular studs that we've seen that kind of originated from the Adi Zero. Then of course you do have the My Coach slot, so if you do have the My Coach chip, you can slot that in your shoe and track your stats. But that's pretty much it, guys, as far as comparing these three models. Like I said, if you want the best version of this particular shoe, definitely go for the Predator LZ. But just keep in mind the LZ is not for everybody. If you haven't gone and checked out the forward review for the Predator LZ on my website, soccerreviewsforyou.com, I highly recommend you do so. It's really going to give you a good idea if this shoe is for you or not for you. And it's really that simple with the LZ. It's one of those shoes that
not everybody's going to like, simply because of how much grip they provide on the ball. So if you haven't gone and checked out the full written review on my website, there will be a link in the description, so go ahead and check that out. The full written review for the Absolion and the Absolado is not up yet, but expect that to be up in the next week or so, because I know a lot of you guys are waiting for this, and I'll get it done as soon as possible. So just keep checking back to the website for that full written review, or go ahead and check out the Facebook page, guys. There will be a link in the description of that. And basically what happens on the Facebook page is any new reviews that go up, any new products that I get in, any new content that's happening whatsoever gets posted on Facebook. So if you just want to be up to date with all the latest SR4U content, the Facebook fan page is the place to do that. So go ahead and check that out. There will be a link in the description of that if you haven't gone and checked that out already. And leave me a comment down below if you have any questions. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.